Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to make bread. I'm using this recipe called Amish white bread from allrecipe.com. And basically what I've done so far is I've added 2 cups of water to my bowl. I like to just heat it up in the bowl that I'm going to be using. So it's 2 cups of water to 1/3 cup of sugar. And we're heating the water up to 110 degrees. And we're just about there. What we'll be doing next is adding in 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. And I'll show you what that looks like for those who don't know. I just buy it in a jar like this. Okay, so now I've got my temperature, 110 degrees. So that's my water. I'm going to add in the yeast. The part where it'll start poofing, you'll see it, it'll poof. It'll come up. It's very cool. Very fun for those who are easily entertained like me. Oh, there. Bloop, 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 bloop. See? So much fun. I love this part. So after it takes about, I think about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then it'll be really poofy. So we'll check back in a few minutes and I'll show you what that stage looks like. Alrighty, we are back through the magic of editing. And our yeast has proofed up. And what we're going to do now is add our salt, which is, I'm just putting a tablespoon. It actually calls for, I'm sorry, a teaspoon. It actually calls for 1.5 teaspoons, but I think that's a lot of salt. And if you look up this recipe, the Amish white bread on All Recipe, you'll see that it has 2/3 cups of white sugar, which is way too much. If you want a sweet bread, for like a cinnamon roll or something, then that's fine, but for Stromboli that we're going to be making, using this bread for, it's way too sweet. So I've cut the sugar in half. Alrighty, so the other part that we put in is 1/4 cup of oil. You can use any kind of oil. I am using peanut oil, because that is what I like. Okay. Now I will be adding flour. It says about 6 cups of flour, bread flour. I like to use the bread flour. But you really just kind of have to go by how it feels. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple cups because it's too liquidy to start stirring it right now. Alright, we got 2 cups there. I'll go ahead and give it a little bit of a stir. Try to incorporate some of that flour into our sugar water yeast mix. As you can see, it's kind of really sloopy. I usually end up getting about 5.5 cups in here, so of flour. And this recipe is actually really good for making a pizza dough. If you want to make your own pizza. It's good for cinnamon rolls. It's good for, what else have we used it for?
I don't know.
Okay, let's add another cup there. So we've got 2 so far. Like I said, you really don't have to be, at least I'm not, 100% accurate with my flour, because I just kind of go off of how it feels. And by that I mean like not sticking to my hands, but not so hard that it's crumbly, because that would be bad. Alright, let's see if we can stir in. It's still pretty wet, so I think I might be able to stir in another cup. The more I can stir in, the less it's going to be all over my hands. So that's 4 cups.
Yeah.
And this is really all that's in this recipe, so it's a very simple bread recipe to make. Most of it is in the rising. Most of the time is in the rising, but it's really yummy bread, and it's really worth it. I like to know what's in my food that I eat. So now I've already pre-greased another bowl like this that we will put it in to let it sit and rise. I think the recipe says an hour and a half, but it just kind of depends on your kitchen and how warm it is as to how quickly it'll rise. But you want it to double in size. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of start incorporating. It's still very sticky because we only got 4 cups of flour in here, but I just cannot stir any more in by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little well here. That makes 5. Ooh, this feels nice and cold. Okay. So then we just keep working it and working it. And we get as much flour incorporated as we can. You just kind of keep folding it over on itself. You can pause it now. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you, I've been sitting here working on it, kneading on it. I got maybe 4.5 cups of flour. Yeah, maybe a little bit, yeah, about 4.5 cups of flour in here. And it already feels right. So, just to kind of give you an idea of what feels right, I can move it around and it's not sticking to my hands. It has a real nice texture to it. Not sure how else to describe it, but so I can put my hand on it and it's not leaving any stickiness. So once we get it to the stage, we're going to, and it's not leaving anything on the counter, so it's a nice feeling stage. And that was only 4.5 cups of flour. So it just goes to show you never can be like, oh, I didn't get all my 6 cups in. It's totally okay. So now we're going to set our little ball into this greased, I've already greased this. And we'll flip it once to kind of make sure that the bread is all, the little ball's all oily. And then we place a towel on top. I like to wet, well, it does recommend you wet it. That way when it rises, it won't stick to your towel. So we're going to let this sit for probably about an hour, and then we'll be back. Okay, so now we're to the part where the dough is risen up. So we punch it down. I usually let Brianna do that, but she's running the camera. So now we're going to roll it out on the counter and divide it into 2. Ooh, that's all crunchy. I'm going to put a little flour out on the counter. Okay. And divide it into 2 more or less equal pieces. And then you just kind of shape it out into a rectangle. Let me get the rolling pin out. Alright. You just do your best to try to keep it rectangular. You don't want to roll it out too thin. Probably about a 1/4 of an inch thick is good. Make sure we're not sticking. Okay, so we've got the bread nicely rolled out. If you like your bread rolled, you can really roll it however you want. You know, I guess that's a little bit more than a 1/4 of an inch, but somewhere in that area. So next I like to layer my cheese, I think. It does make a little bit of a difference how you layer it. Like if I do the salami, the pepperoni, then it makes the bread really greasy. I think, I think I actually do. So I should probably tell you what I have here. I have hard salami, which isn't as bad, so I think I'm going to put that on next. So I got my hard salami, and I'm just kind of layering. Okay, so back to the layering here. I'm going to layer my sandwich pepperoni. And really you can use whatever ingredients you like. I think the original recipe called for ham with the pepperoni and salami. But I personally just kind of like it this way. I've even done this where I've used like scrambled eggs and ham and cheese and made like a breakfast kind of thing. That was really yummy. Next I'm using provolone cheese. And again, you can use whatever kind of cheese you like best. And then some mozzarella. And I think the original recipe called for Parmesan as well, but I just stick with these two. Cheeses, it's plenty. Okay, kind of spread that out. Next I'm going to put in my seasoning, which you can put whatever you like. I like basil. And I like some thyme. And some oregano. Okay, I think we'll also put, well no, not this time. Sometimes I put some garlic salt in here as well. I might brush that on the top. I did that last time, it turned out really good. So now you kind of roll it like a burrito. We're sticking a little bit. Okay. And sometimes you lose some of your filling. Push it down and give it a roll over. And then you want to use some water to wet the ends and kind of pinch it together. So we'll stuff that cheese back in there. Kind of wet all around that lip. Pinch it, pinch it, pinch it. Help it stay closed. We'll add all these ends. Dun, 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 dun. Now, if you don't want to go to all the trouble of making your own bread, you can also use Rhodes frozen bread. Find it in the freezer section. It's called Rhodes. You just follow the directions on there. I think there's 3 different thaw methods. And you just follow whichever one works for you. And you do the same thing. Once you let it rise, and then you pat it out into a rectangle. Oop, I don't think I've got a good seal here. If I don't have a good seal, it will leak out everywhere. All that cheese and yumminess. So. Alright, then we put it on our pan. And then you can either brush it with some butter or brush it with egg yolk. And that'll give it a nice golden brown. You cook it in the oven till it's done at about 350. And that's Stromboli. Thanks for watching.